The following is an original production of AZPM News.
For AZPM, I'm Mark McLemore, and this is Arizona Spotlight. Coming up, hear about the Southern Arizona Arts Guild, a local group that wants to help everyone connect with their creativity. Historian and columnist David Layton looks back at the aviation history behind Ryan Field. Invisible Theater's new production follows love across the universe and beyond, and storyteller Beth Colburn Orozco shares an emotional story about adoption, remorse, and how life and love persevere. Those stories are next on Arizona Spotlight. Have you been looking for a way to get in touch with your creativity? There's a grassroots organization in Tucson that is helping people do just that, and they're marking their 23rd year in the community by moving to a new and expanded gallery and teaching space. Joining me now are Therese Butler. She's the president of the Southern Arizona Arts Guild. Also, Karen Stedman, a participating artist who's also the Gallery Events Committee Chair. Therese begins.
We opened our new doors just this week, and that is at the Jostler Village, which is on River and Campbell, which is kitty corner from St. Philip's Plaza. We were able to design this building from scratch, and we also have a dedicated classroom, and that's getting its own upgrades too. So we feel like we're stepping it up, and we're pretty excited about that.
For people who are not familiar with the Guild, can you just give us a mission statement?
First of all, what we are doing is welcoming anybody into our Guild who has an interest in the arts, is an artist, or would like to learn how you do become an artist. The second part is that we also want to fulfill our nonprofit corporation by providing opportunities for the public to enjoy art, and we do offer some free programs to do that. And third, one of the important things about our mission statement is that we are non-judgmental, everybody is valued, and we're there to provide support to each other.
And our second guest here today is Karen. Please tell our audience something about what you do and why you're committed to being an artist.
It's really interesting because without the Guild, I don't think I'd call myself an artist. I've always done artsy things. And I started weaving 40 years ago in Saudi Arabia. And I kept all of my weaving equipment, and then I got busy with my career and my family. And so when I retired and came back to Tucson, because I did my graduate work here at the U of A, I decided I wanted to get back into some of the art stuff that I really enjoyed doing. I just went to one of the Guild Saturday meetings, and somebody asked me what I did, and I showed some pictures of some of my weavings, and I was invited to be juried in. I was very apprehensive about this because I didn't consider myself an artist at that time. And my work was accepted, and so I started showing my weavings. Then during the shutdown, the COVID shutdown, I got back into painting, which is something I had done since I was a teenager. And again, I was invited to have my paintings juried, and they were brought into the gallery. And it's really because of the Guild that I've come to identify as an artist. And the Guild has helped me grow enormously. And I found it to be the most supportive group of people that I have ever worked with. I don't know if I would have had the confidence to do this without the Guild.
For an artist operating in Southern Arizona, what kind of support can you say that the Guild might offer that person?
A lot of it is just the positive energy from other artists. As artists in the gallery, we work volunteer shifts every month, and working with other artists has been incredibly innovating. I love doing it because I love working with other artists. We talk to each other, we support each other. Even last weekend when we were moving our work in, I was moving my jewelry into my showcase next to another jeweler who I haven't worked with him on the floor, doing a shift. But we started talking, and we've already made plans to start sharing resources. I'm sending him some stuff. He's sending me some stuff. And that's the kind of synergy that we have in the gallery. The opportunity to teach classes is another opportunity because teaching always makes you grow. You have to think about what you do and then think about how to help other people do it. And I've enjoyed teaching the classes as well. And one of the things that Therese didn't mention, which I think is very important, is that we have a scholarship program, and we support emerging artists, college students here in Tucson, with our scholarship program.
Yes, it usually is in increments of $500, which is used by them at their college. We'd like to give them the opportunity to see how they can make this a profession.
People sometimes look at art and they see a certain kind of primitivism to it, or they see a do-it-yourself aspect that they could do if they had time or a rainy day, whatever. What would you say about that? Kindling the creative spirit, something you've learned from your time with the Guild. Karen, we'll start with you.
Well, I was just thinking about the last class I taught, which was a basket making class. All the students in that class all said, we didn't realize how complicated this was and how much goes into not only the actual physical weaving of the basket, but planning it, thinking about what you want it to look like. I mean, that's one of the things that the classes really help with. They help people to understand how complex the work that goes into creating the art is.
And Therese, something you might share about kindling the creative spirit that you've learned from your time in the Guild.
Yes, and I'd say it even goes back a little further than that. When I first started fusing art and apprenticing under an artist, it was in '06. And I can understand where people think about, do I have the time? Because my work life had consumed me for so long. And so by taking classes or discussing what I'm doing with another artist, like Karen had mentioned earlier, it's energizing. And we're also not afraid to share ideas. And, we hear people say I'm not creative. And I used an example we had in the gallery about a year ago. A hummingbird got caught in our gallery one night. And it spent the night there, and I was going to be the cashier the next day, so I'd gotten a note from the last cashier saying, I hope this little guy's still alive. So it finally made itself visible. And then this whole creativity formed because customers in the gallery wanted to help get that little hummingbird back outside. And people were going, turn off the lights, open the doors, let it see light. Let's help it get out of here. And it worked. And people just clapped afterwards. And I was like, see, you are creative. You are very creative. You just have to see how you want to apply that creativity.
Thanks to Therese Butler and Karen Stedman from the Southern Arizona Arts Guild. The group holds many regular events and classes and is celebrating the grand opening of their new gallery throughout this month. We have a way to get in touch on the Spotlight page at azpm.org. Local historian and author David Layton joins me now to share some history behind a recognizable Tucson place name. He'll give some background on Ryan Field and the man that it was named after, who Layton calls one of the most important early aviation pioneers.
T. Claude Ryan was born in 1898 in the state of Kansas. His story in relation to aviation, I think, begins really in 1911 when he saw Cal P. Rogers' airplane, the Vin Fizz, land in Kansas. That was the first transcontinental flight in the United States. And I think it really excited him and got him interested in aviation.
Apparently, he started his aviation career in California at a place called the American School of Aviation near Venice, California. And the school only had 2 rundown airplanes and a flight instructor who had barely flown a solo in his life.
Yeah, his actual formal education began at that school that was on the brink of bankruptcy. And the funny story is actually when he did his solo, he actually kind of partially crashed and it destroyed the propeller of one of the planes. And that actually put the actual aviation school out of business at that point. They were so broke.
But he was destined for bigger things. And so when I realized that there was a connection with Charles Lindbergh, I was very impressed.
Yeah, not a lot of people are aware that it was T. Claude Ryan and his staff at his own aviation company that he owned that actually built the Spirit of St. Louis, that Charles Lindbergh flew from New York to Paris in mid-1927 and to the history books.
Yeah, that's right. You say that here, and it was about 1926. By then, Ryan already had his manufacturing enterprise going, and they were able to do that in terms of building that plane. Tell us how his connection to Tucson came about, because it's connected to another enormous moment in history.
His connection to Tucson was a result of the attack on Pearl Harbor by the Japanese Air Force. After the attack, the U.S. Air Corps, as it was called back then, wanted to expand to schools and train more pilots than it was capable of doing at its own Air Force bases. It really begins 1938 when they contacted him to open a school for military training in Hemet, California. But after the Pearl Harbor attack, they wanted another school, military school, more inland, so they chose Tucson instead of San Diego or California. And that's how what we now know as Ryan Field was originally created.
But the original conditions at the Ryan School of Aeronautics of Arizona were not good ones. Tell people a little bit about the challenges that the students and instructors had to face.
Yeah, so in the middle of the summer, we're talking June 1942, that's when construction started about 15 miles southwest of Tucson along Ajo Highway. This is out in the middle of the desert. It's hot, it's sandy. As they're trying to construct wooden buildings, there's sand flying everywhere. Sand and dirt are in everything they're doing. When they're trying to cook meals in buildings that are not complete yet, sand is getting into the stoves. It's getting into typewriters. It's getting everywhere you could possibly imagine, even into the airplanes themselves. You can read newspaper clippings about cadet pilots flying the Ryan PT-22, and when they're doing rolls, how sand from the bottom of the floor of the airplane are actually getting into their mouth and nose and trying to get into their eyes, although they're wearing goggles.
I guess rolling up the windows on the airplane wasn't a good enough option?
No, the PT-22 cadet trainer was an open cockpit, so there was no option on that particular one there.
And then also some local residents that preceded the school made themselves known. You talk about challenges from rattlesnakes, scorpions, and the ever-popular Gila monster.
Yeah, when they constructed the school, these vermin and Gila monsters decided that this was a good deal to start going into the wooden buildings to get a break from the sun. Unfortunately, they were unwilling to sign up as cadets, and so they were escorted off property by MPs.
I'm just picturing a Gila monster doing a perp walk. It's just kind of funny. And what is the status of Ryan Airfield today, as far as you know?
As far as I know, Ryan Field is a small civilian airport, and they also store planes there as well.
David, I know that you have a personal interest in this era of aviation history. What is it that you find compelling about the 1920s, 30s, and 40s and the men who were making breakthroughs and risking everything to try to get bigger and better planes in the air?
I think anytime you're dealing with something that, like aircraft, for example, that's so influential on modern day lives. I mean, we can fly across the country in 3 hours. We can get packages delivered through aircraft in less than a day. Something that's impacted our everyday lives so much. I think it's pertinent to look back and see how it all began. I think it's relevant to talk about the early aviators, many of them who lost their lives. I mean, it was not uncommon to die in a plane crash. That their sacrifices, their risk has led to our lives being so much easier, has led to more interconnectivity throughout the world between countries. So it's something that's aviation is so important in our modern day lives, but there's people that came before us. It's like talking about Tucson pioneers that came to Tucson and built this city that we now get in our cars and drive around in air conditioning. We don't think about these things. We don't think about the historical past and the sacrifices people made so our lives can be so much better.
David Layton is a local historian and author who writes the Street Smarts column for the Arizona Daily Star. In the words of artistic director Betsy Cruz Craig, the Invisible Theater is always looking for dramatic literature that is a little bit different. Their current production is a story of love that extends across a multitude of universes, reflecting on the very human tendency to question whether the choices we make are the right ones. It features just two characters, Marianne, a quantum physicist, and Roland, a beekeeper. Betsy Cruz Craig and the play's director, Carrie J. Cole, will tell us more.
When you think about doing a love story, a lot of things come to mind. Nick Payne's Constellations has been around since I think 2011, 2012. And it's a play that the first time I read it, I fell in love with it because it was such an incredibly different telling of a love story. It was like, how do you find the right two people who literally have a love story for the ages, for the ages, the cosmos, and everything in between? And Sean Patrick and Shannon Elias, who were in a production last year for us called Almost Maine, auditioned for this piece separately. I don't think they even read together until maybe ever. And they both really kind of rose to the surface as having the right qualities for these two characters. The interesting little twist of this is that these two individuals have been best friends since the 8th grade in real life. So what better combination to have two people who have the innate, inherent trust that a piece like this really needs when you're addressing a relationship of this type that is so very intimate and varied and challenging. You need to be brave. You need to trust each other. And these two have such an incredible kismet and chemistry that it feeds the story, it feeds the process, it feeds the play. And we couldn't be happier that it all shook down the way it did.
Carrie J. Cole, I'd like to ask how you got involved with this production. And when you first read the play, what was your response?
Oh, well, when I first read the play, when it first came out too, it actually made me miss being an actor. It was one of those moments where I was roughly the age of the character, Marianne, at the time, and I had that thrumming of, oh, this is the kind of role that like every woman of a certain age wants to be able to play. And
why is that? What's an example of that, the range that it calls for?
She's smart. She's strong. She knows what she wants. And she's struggling with very real issues. She's struggling with her health and a brain-related health matter that, calls into question how we know things, how we remember things, and how we articulate things. And the fact that she gets to be strong and smart and vulnerable and playful. It's just such a beautifully dimensional character. Both of the characters are just so rich. And I think just such a joy to explore.
What was one of the bigger challenges that you needed to overcome to make this production work?
As with any piece of theater, when you integrate all of the technical elements together, that's always a challenge, particularly when you're rehearsing, with myself, our amazing stage manager, Emily Dorenbos, and the two actors. It's just the four of us for rehearsals. And then suddenly you're trying to bring in other people who have their own creative input and get that all to mesh in a very short period of time.
As a person who makes no secret of the fact that I'm a fan of speculative fiction, I found it intriguing when I heard about the alternate universe component. Is there some way that you portray that on stage? Is it through costuming or lighting changes?
Well, the interesting thing is that once the actors are on stage, they never leave until the end. So costume changes would have been a real challenge. So we actually are working with all of the designers, the scenic designer who also is doing a really amazing job with the projections, Todd Polstra, and has been able to give us this sense of movement and constellations and outer space that really transforms the IT space in a delicious way.
Carrie, this sounds to me like the kind of play that's going to inspire a lot of discussion afterwards between the audience members who may have attended it together, but I also know that IT likes to do things that bring in community engagement. So what do you have planned for this production?
Well, I do sincerely hope that people will stay after and chat informally after every show. But in the second week, we do have a talk back scheduled. I'm going to let Betsy fill in that date because I don't have it off the top of my head.
Well, that makes a fine time to go back to Betsy Cruz Craig so she can tell everyone how and when they can interact with the Constellations.
Constellations is running at the Invisible Theater from January 11th through the 25th with a talkback with the cast and production staff on Thursday, the 22nd, which is the second week of the run. Tickets are on sale now, www.invisibletheater.com.
These are the dates for this universe.
Yes.
Yes.
May not be applicable in all universes.
It might not be applicable in all universi.
There can be something very powerful about a single voice sharing a true story. It's a chance for the storyteller to let their personality shine and forge new and unexpected connections with anyone listening. In support of this important community tradition, Arizona Spotlight will feature a different local storyteller on the third Thursday of each month. Here's Tony Paniagua to introduce our guest.
Thank you, Mark. Our storyteller this month is Beth Colburn Orozco. Colburn Orozco is a writer who teaches at Cochise College southeast of Tucson. She also runs an open mic night event the second Thursday of each month in Sierra Vista, where she encourages other people to share their music, poetry, and short stories. Here is one of her own emotional accounts that was decades in the making.
This story is called The Search. Our realtor called with bad news. The woman buying our house had pulled out of the deal that morning. My husband Ron was in Kenya on business. Our WhatsApp communication was iffy, and I hadn't heard from him in 3 days. Standing among a sea of boxes and scattered furniture in our new house, I fell apart. I was both anxious and angry, but it was more than that. I felt untethered. Needing something to ground me, an overwhelming desire to find my daughter struck me. Digging through the mess in my new living room, I found the adoption box and my laptop. Unpacking could wait as I emptied the contents onto the dining room table. I'd always searched for clues as to where she might be, but when the tears came, accompanied by frustration and a sense of hopelessness, I'd quit. This time was different. Unpacking faded into the ether as I began what would quickly become an obsession to find my daughter. I named her Carly after seeing Carly Simon singing Itsy Bitsy Spider on a music video. Her adoptive parents named her Kelsey. All I had was her birth date, her first name, and the memories of her cocoa-colored eyes and the shock of black hair atop her tiny head when she was born. At the adoption agency, I had requested that she would be raised Catholic in a rural community. I had hoped that we would at least have these things in common when we were reunited. Unable to sleep that night, I brought my laptop to bed. When Kelsey was born, I was still living in Wisconsin, where I was raised. In a Google search, I entered the name Kelsey and Wisconsin. Several women appeared, though none of them fit my daughter's description. This went on for hours. At some point, the dogs started whining. The sun had come up, and they wanted out. I quickly entered a sleep-deprived, insatiable preoccupation to find my daughter. By the time my husband came home, I was out of control. Days had passed since I began the search, and despite an inbox full of midterms to grade, emails to answer, and laundry piling up next to the washer, I was powerless against the yearning. I became adept at keeping notes and cross-referencing information from online searches. Facebook paired my daughter's first name with real people, gorgeous women in their late 20s with dark eyes. Does that girl look like me? I wondered. I found teachers, photographers, nurses, engineers, and waitresses, women who were married with children and others who were single. Several weeks into the search, I thought I might lose my job. I'd gone down the rabbit hole. I was praying, on my knees at the foot of the bed kind of praying, with my forehead resting on folded hands. I begged, "Please, God, I need help. I need an angel." Shortly afterwards, my prayers were answered by a woman who worked for an organization called Search Angels. She taught me how to refine my online searches and provided a list of sites I hadn't thought to access. But most importantly, she cheered me on. I may have been failing at work and at home, but this one thing I was good at. I would find my daughter. After Thanksgiving, I went to bed and stayed there for 3 days. My body ached. I had to give up the search to sleep. Nearly 2 months had passed since I began looking for Kelsey. As I started to feel better, I hoped the spell was broken. I told myself if my daughter was out there, it simply wasn't my time to find her. Wrapped in blankets, I retrieved my laptop to see if the search angel had found anything. She hadn't. Discouraged, I turned on a movie and entered Kelsey's name and birth date into my laptop. On Google's 3rd or 4th page, I found an obituary for a girl who had died in a car accident. For the first time, it occurred to me that perhaps my daughter was dead, which was why I couldn't find her. I had worried about all the things that could have gone wrong in her life because of my egregious mistake in giving her up. But if she were gone, I would never have the chance to say I'm sorry, to say I love you. The thought that Kelsey might be dead haunted me. The holidays came and went as I scoured the internet for my daughter. Then, one night in January, the name of someone I hadn't seen before appeared in a simple Google search. Hands shaking, I entered the name into Facebook. Kelsey's photo popped up on the screen, and the place where she had lived inside me flooded with visceral heat. "There you are, sweet girl," I whispered. She had my profile, my fingers, and my chin. In that moment of seeing my likeness in another human being, I secured my place in the world. I had not made a mistake. I had made her.
Thank you again, author and educator Beth Colburn Orozco. In case you're wondering, Kelsey did grow up in a Catholic family in a rural area. She is married and lives with her husband in Wisconsin with several children. After the family is connected, they all visited Beth Colburn Orozco and her husband for Christmas 2024 and again last month. Colburn Orozco says, quote, "It still feels like a dream having my daughter in my life." For more information about her and the monthly open mic night in Sierra Vista, please visit our website at azpm.org. For Arizona Spotlight, I'm Tony Paniagua.
Thank you for listening to Arizona Spotlight. This show is a production of AZPM and is posted weekly at azpm.org. The production engineer is Jim Blackwood. I'm producer and host Mark McLemore.
This has been an original production of AZPM News.